Hey, I'm Di McQueen, licensed clinical social worker, family and addiction expert. I'm here with Dr. Brian Jackson, my longtime cohort who specializes in the field of addiction. Welcome to Healing Families Shattered by Addiction.
Di and I have worked with addicts, alcoholics, and their families for over 30 years combined. Our podcast and coaching programs focus on families who have a loved one suffering from addiction. Our experience has been that this disease affects families as much, if not more, than the addict or alcoholic.
Is your world spinning out of control? Are you codependent? Are you experiencing worry, loss of sleep, and difficulty concentrating? If so, you're in the right place. Brian and I have both personally lived it, learned it, and now we're going to teach you tools and techniques on how to get your life back that you thought was shattered by addiction.
Okay, let's dive in.
Hi, everybody. This is Dr. Brian Jackson, and I am here with my partner and friend, Miss Diane McQueen, who is a licensed clinical social worker, a master's certification addiction professional, an advanced accelerated resolution therapist. I like to always talk about all these credentials and letters that she has behind her name. She's still paying for them, though. So,
Yeah, we got him out of a Cracker Jack box for you, don't
yeah,
you? You did too, you doctor of addiction, you. Anyway, Brian is a doctor of addictive disorders as well. But all those things, those titles don't really matter for us. We decided that what we're doing these days is much better.
Right. I mean, we're talking to you from past experience. I'm coming up on 25 years of sobriety and abstinence, and Di is over 30 years, abstinent and sobriety. So the great thing about what we're doing right now is that we can do a lot of self-disclosure about what our experiences have been. So I think one of our sayings is we lived it, we learned it, and we like to teach it. So here on our podcast, Healing Families Shattered by Addiction, sometimes we go back and forth on what do you think would be a good topic, what time of the year is it or whatever. And so obviously we are in December. So, peace, joy, and love for everybody, but it's also a very festive season where there may be some obligatory events that you need to go to as a family member, maybe with a family member who's trying to stop, cut down, or a family member who is newly in recovery. And so we just want to kind of go through how maybe you deal with an obligatory event that you have to go to in terms of the suggestions that we have, and a non-obligatory event, like you're invited to 10 Christmas parties, but you really don't have to be there. To maybe it's a good time of the year to set boundaries and maybe resist going to those as much as you would like to. And we'll kind of get into that in terms of why it's not a great idea. I mean, we talk a lot about people, places, and things, but we're going to get into some of the reasons why or what happens to us when we're overexposed to a festive atmosphere like that, where alcohol or other substances are available. So Di, do you want to pick it up from there? And
yeah, I think
Merry Christmas
what a great topic. We always talk about the trifecta, right? Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's as being a very difficult time of year for a lot of people. Thanksgiving already in the rear view mirror, of course, but the two big ones coming up, and for both the newly recovering addict or alcoholic, or even the ones that are sort of still in their cups, right? But for the family, it can be daunting, right? And not really understanding that they have some choices and that there's some actual things that they can do to both help, be supportive, but also help take care of themselves. And so we thought that this would be a wonderful time it's a wonderful time of the year. so I figured we would this would be a fun one for the two of us, and I know you really come at it from a really cool point of view that's really, really helpful, as we discuss ways in which we can help those in the family understand what might be helpful for somebody, especially in new recovery. And how to take care of themselves. So I'm going to let you start by introducing, your sort of take on the five senses and
Yeah,
what.
yeah. So let's just say it's an obligatory Christmas family thing that we do every year, and we have to make an appearance. It's real important for the person who is newly in recovery or trying to get into recovery, um, to be aware of some hints, that we have for you that I think are very direct and very constructive. Um, Number one, if you're going to go, um, always have your own form of transportation. Because a lot of times you could ride with a family member and you're getting really uptight 1 hour in, and they want to stay for 3 hours. That's going to be a really bad movie for you to watch. Okay, so Di and I have gone over this a lot. It's real important for you to have something in your stomach before you go to this festivity. Okay, and it is even as important to maybe arrive late. Make sure you have your own non-alcoholic beverage in your hand and leave early. And when I say leave early, it doesn't mean that you just blow everybody off, but you get to say hello to everybody and see everybody and you've done your thing. But again, if it starts getting like where it's really uncomfortable, have your own form of transportation and do not be a people pleaser and hang around, because what we want to do is protect our sobriety. We want to protect ourselves. And for family members, it's important to also know this, that the things that go on with the newly recovered family member who's returned to the family, and maybe this is the first Christmas in forever, that person has been sober, that you are aware of these things. And so we talk a lot about people, places, and things. And the reason we talk about that, and people get, almost like, what are you talking about there, people, places, and things? So there's three things that we have. We have thoughts, we have feelings, and we have senses. So what happens is when we're in a festive situation, it starts working on our senses, okay? And this is a brain reaction to the senses and what we see. So let's start with eyesight, what we see. We see Johnny having a couple of drinks and he looks like he's having a good time. We hear the ice cubes, with our hearing. We're listening to the music. We might have a taste of a steak, that we used to drink wine with. And let's see, where am I at? Eyes. Oh,
You,
smells. You
yeah,
smell. Yeah, I can remember 15 years into sobriety, I'm at this fancy restaurant. Don't know what I was doing there because we really don't go out to fancy restaurants. And this corporate group was next to us and they were drinking wine and I could smell the wine and I'm eating my food. And the thought went through my head, boy, it would be really nice to have a glass of wine with this food.
right.
And um, and my next thought was, where the hell did that come from? So think about it, music, seeing people having a good time, hearing, all this stuff, tasting food that's good, that would be good with a drink. And I don't know where the touch comes in, except maybe you're
Well, maybe
clenching
you're
your hand, you're squeezing your hand so tight
right.
because
Or
you're
someone
so
comes up and
uncomfortable.
grabs your hand and it brings back a recollection of something, that you go, huh, last time I had a drink, this beautiful woman came up and grabbed my hand, and there we are, right? All that recall that gets us into,
Or maybe you're at a reception where they put a glass of wine in front of you,
yep,
an empty glass of wine, and you have to, put your hand over it and say,
yep,
no, that's not for me. I mean, funny story, 24 years sober, every Thanksgiving, I go to my sister's house and she said, oh, you can have one glass of wine. You haven't had a drink in a long time. And I just laugh, because I can't get aggravated about it anymore because she's like, well, why do you go to those meetings? Are you afraid you're going to drink? Oh my God. But in any event, um, it's a really, um, it's a dangerous situation. And so when we talk about people, places, and things and an overexposure to substances, the five senses that are working on that festive atmosphere, what happens in the brain, we have the adult rational side of the brain and we have the impulse side of the brain. And the
right.
University of Pennsylvania just did a study where they could peek inside of the brain with an MRI, and they exposed this gentleman who was 9 months sober to snippets of drinks and alcohol and glasses and all the rest. And his whole brain lit up red, meaning the impulse side lit up. And so the adult rational side wasn't there to weigh in and say, hey, maybe this is not a good idea, or maybe I should get in my car and leave. It was just go, go, go. And so at that point, you're really over the edge. And the next thing you know, you pick up a drink and,
Yeah.
you know, or maybe you could talk about like people that are newly in recovery or been in recovery for a while and it's the holidays. And for whatever reason, they think that, maybe I could have one or two.
Well, I think there's that for, where we rationalize it. And I think it's really important. Let me just flip back for a second on the family, which is the understanding that, things like now they're sober and everything is going to be perfect, right? Like they get it now and we aren't going to have any more problems and everything is copacetic. And there it is. Someone's offering them a drink and they're freaking out and they're trying to like step in there and figure out what they need to say or do. And I'm like, first of all, not theirs to say and do, right? They need to step away from. But also the understanding that it's not their embarrassment when the family member decides to leave early, because that's a big one, right? Where they get all embarrassed and ashamed and figuring out like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing because now everyone's going to know. Well, the truth is, everybody probably already knew, right? Probably way before the alcoholic and the family member actually got what was going on. Most people do have a clue. But I think that's super important, right? Where that also is, the ability to want to leave a little bit early. Hey, honey, I'm starting to feel really uncomfortable here. The family member needs to be supportive and say, I totally understand. If it, do you want me to come with you? If they really don't want to come and they want to stay, then you have, like Brian suggested earlier, to already have an established way for that person to get home and, to get out of that environment. The thoughts of maybe doing like, I want to drink because everybody else is, and now the cleaning of the glasses and the ice cubes and everything else has now got my little, fire going. That's a good time to say, you know what, I've been here for an hour and a half, and I need to get to a meeting. And that was in the plan, right? Because we're not that strong yet. Um, we don't have great willpower. As we know with addiction, it's not willpower that's going to get us through. But the family needs to understand and not try to like embarrass this person, try to make excuses for this person, try to or take on what the other person is doing, because that seems to be one that we've heard a lot where, we've got to show up for the family, but I'm embarrassed because they only want to stay an hour. And, after all the things that they've done and all the parties they've screwed up, I'm like, well, right now, the most important thing is this person is recovering and in early infant stages. So it's like, for instance, if the person had just gotten diagnosed with diabetes, you're not going to shove the piece of cake in their face and say, eat it, right? You're going to say, you know what, we need to kind of work on that. Let's not offer them the piece of cake. Let's try not to do these things that are going to incite the person to want to do something that they don't need to or want to do. But I'm going to be supportive. Like, I'm not going to have dessert tonight either because you can't have it. So I'm not going to drink tonight, honey, because you can't drink. And it's fine. It's not a big deal. We're going to do all the things that we can do. And we're going to have a discussion way before we go. And it may be important to let the host know, right? That may be something that we discuss in our discussion about letting another, if it's a family member or whatever, like I said, they probably already know. But if not, we can have the discussion is maybe I should just let them know that, you're no longer drinking. So please, don't make this a big deal for them. I mean, there's all kinds of things that we can do, but the idea is to understand we have power and we have control over what we do for ourselves and or our family member. I know there's a lot of people. I can remember one of our attorney clients saying to me, I can't go to this party. Everybody drinks. Like I can't be standing there without a drink. And so I said, well, how about doing club soda with a lime? Like nobody will ever know if that's what you're worried about. And in fact, that is exactly what, he chose to do and said it was amazing. Like nobody even asked me a question, number one. The next time around, he said, I started realizing like not everybody had a drink in their hand. Like I wasn't necessarily a leper. And I'm like, people go to parties and people don't always drink, right? Like that's okay to make that decision and do. So I think there's so much to this that we can, but I think the premise starts with discussing it with your family, or your support network. It may not be just family, right? But it may be your support on how's best to handle this for me so that I feel comfortable, you feel comfortable, and we have a plan. A plan is super important. Would you agree, B?
Yeah, and there's a point that I wanted to bring up, like we're so excited when a family member gets sober. Okay, we're used to them drinking, drinking their faces off, disappearing for days. Now they're clean and sober, and we think, well, maybe they could have one drink, not really knowing what's behind that. So, Di, you'll agree with this. We've treated, on an intensive outpatient treatment level, like 3, 4,000 people. And from where I sit professionally and personally, whenever a person who has an alcohol use disorder returns to drinking, even that one drink at that one party is going to start the physical cravings and the mental obsession. And whether it's a short period of time or a longer period of time, that person, not 90% of the time, not 95% of the time, 100% of the time, will return to drinking at the level they were at or more. I have never met I have never met the one in a million that has been able to return to drinking, quote unquote, normally. So I think
Exactly. And let
that,
me make one more comment, B. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's also, yeah, as you know, like my drug of choice is not alcohol. But what I learned was that if I drink alcohol, sooner or later, I'm going to get back to the place where my, inhibitions come down. And guess what I do? I go out and I start using a drug, right? So
mhm.
even for drug addicts or abuse of a different kind, right, of a substance, we don't recommend drinking alcohol, even though that's not necessarily your drug of choice, because what it does in your brain is actually, you know, put the filter down. And then that one pill that someone says, you know what, I just have this one pill. Like, you probably like, we can really have a good time here. I know you can't drink anymore, but let's just do this, right? Or whatever. And if you're an addict like me, right, that can start the same wheel going as Brian just described. So it doesn't really matter, if you will have addiction issues of any kind that relate to drugs and or alcohol, taking that first drink is not a good idea.
Yeah, and as people with a substance use disorder or an alcohol use disorder, we like to change the way we feel. And so the rationalization and justification comes in and says, you know what? Alcohol was my thing. Pain pills wasn't my thing. So maybe I can dabble in that or this, that, or the other thing. And I call it switching chairs on the Titanic. For
It's
example, for example, when I was in my addiction, I hated cannabis, THC, marijuana, doobie to put an age on it. But if you had put me in my active addiction on a deserted island and the only thing that was there was cannabis, I guarantee you that I would smoke cannabis. And the reason I would smoke cannabis is because I would want to change the way I felt. So thus the importance of meetings. Abstinence is one thing, but we have to make a lot of changes because, as you and I talked about the other day, people will say, "Oh, they got an alcohol problem or a drug problem." Well, in the beginning, it really was a solution based thing, and then it became a problem. So that it was a solution to anxiety, depression, trauma, PTSD, whatever it was. And so we have to remove the drug of choice and really get down to the changes that we need to make. I mean, we hear all the time about, the drunken horse thief, and we sober them up. Well, guess what? We got a sober horse thief. So we've got to work on teaching them how not to steal
right.
horses, right? So,
Exactly. And I think that that's really the truth. So, and the other misnomer is, even if, let's say, they go to this party and that particular night they were able to control it with 2 drinks, it will be very short order, guaranteed. We've had many people experiment with this, right, B, where they go, but I was able to do it. And then about 3 weeks later, we get an email, a phone call, or something. Uh, I'm completely out of control again, and I don't know what happened. And we go, well, I guess that experiment didn't work out so well after all. So family members do not offer a drink ever,
Hmm.
ever. It's not going to end well.
Right.
Guaranteed, right?
So there's no such thing as a little bit pregnant. You're either
That's
drinking or
exactly
you're
right.
not drinking. So I don't know if that was appropriate to say, but I said it. Anyhow, um, yeah. So I think those are some good tips. As we go into this time of the year, and there's a whole series of firsts. It might be the first time you've ever gone into the holidays sober, and so there's some fear associated with that because you associate the holidays with partying in whatever way that you did it. But the good news is if you can get through it and have the support system in place and a plan is important. Don't go in there flying blind. To have a plan in place, follow the plan, get through this Christmas or this holiday, and guess what? Next year is not going to be as challenging. So,
Yes, and I love that. And right before we close, I want to remind family members. I know this is a really tough one because this happens quite often, right? Which is this is the first time in a very long time this person's been sober. We finally can breathe, but we also have some resentment about the fact that they've taken away from time and, I want to do what I want to do. And I'm like, we are going to suggest to you to do what you want to do. However, with the understanding that this person cannot, right? Because I get that a lot from families like, God, I've been dealing with this for 10 years, for 15 years, and finally, now I have resentment because they don't get it that I need something. And I'm like, they're working really, really, really hard. I go, remember that they're carrying around a 25-pound noose around or backpack on their back at all times. This rock is heavy and it's hard, and it's not going to go away just because they're sober. You have the right as a family member or the support network to go out and do what you need to do. Just remember that you need to, or you're willing to be supportive. That means I may not be able to stay the whole time. If that's the plan, then we need to understand that and go, like, for me to be supportive, I'm going to agree to this, right? If I don't agree to it, that's okay too, but understand that this person may have to go and do what they need to do to take care of themselves. It's not personal. It's not about you. You can do what you need to do to take care of yourself and remind yourself that they're not doing this to hurt you. Because sometimes that's the understanding that, God, I've been putting up with this for so long. And now look, I still have to give up. I'm like, well, it's a give up that I'd choose to do any day of the week for the people that I love and care about, hoping and praying that this time, by next year, as B just said, it'll be a much better place to be and they'll be a lot more stabilized.
exactly.
Yeah.
So we want to wish everybody a happy, safe, sober, and loving festive season. Di, I'm grateful for you and grateful for the people that work with us. Di and I were talking the other day, and it's really like a vocation for us, as opposed to being a job. And we get real excited when we see people making changes in their lives, getting better, and it's not us doing it for them. It's us, you know, offering them help to help themselves, and they take action, and things start to get better for them. Sometimes little by little, sometimes quicker, but it's just so wonderful to see that we don't have to live like this if we choose not to. So,
Right.
um,
And B, you have been a gift in my life for many, many years now. And I don't know what I'd do without you, honestly, as my partner and my friend. And I
well, thank you.
appreciate that. And I
That's
wish
very.
you and yours a very happy holiday season as well.
I'm sure we'll celebrate some of it together.
We
Sober,
certainly will.
sober.
We
So,
certainly will. Sober,
and
that's right.
and we will have genuine laughter, not drunken laughter.
Well, couldn't you imagine that sight, right? If both of us decided to relapse at the same time, I'm sure that it would get real crazy real quick.
Yeah, that would be a bad cocktail, no pun intended. So,
And I'm sure our significant other spouses, etc., would be loving that. So,
no,
anyway, on that happy note, we do wish you all a very happy holiday season, and we are here for you at any time. Send us an email with a question, set up a free consult. Listen to our podcast. We have a free family resource page. that you are welcome to get some resource information from at any time. Just go onto our website, which is www.familyandaddictionexperts.com.
Okay, kid. I'll
Take
see you
care.
around campus.
You sure will.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks so much for joining our podcast, Healing Families Shattered by Addiction. We'll be back in a couple weeks with more important tools, techniques, and ways for you to focus on you instead of the alcoholic or addict in your world.
Until then, please go to our website, familyandaddictionexperts.com. That's familyandaddictionexperts.com. You'll also see links to our Facebook and Instagram pages. Please also, if you have any emails that you would like to send us, that's info@familyandaddictionexperts.com. That's info@familyandaddictionexperts.com. With any thoughts, feelings, questions that you may have for us, we would love to hear from you, and we look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.